So, shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Greetings and warm welcome to all the dignitaries present here. I am Rimrimpa from Clearnet, serving as the allocated session assistant to ensure a seamless experience. Clearnet proudly stand as India's most relied upon digital platform, offering a multitude of enriching services exclusively for doctors. It is with great pride that Clearnet serve as the digital partner for this event hosted by Pediatric Allergy and Applied Immunology chapter. So the focus of today's session is case discussion on ap- atopic dermatitis. So now I would like to invite Dr. Deepthi Pujari, ma'am, to proceed with the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Uh,
Um,
Dr. Deepthi,
Good.
Dr. Deepthi, for a minute, please. Yeah.
Yes.
So, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Neeraj Gupta. I am now representing the chapter as a chairperson. So, this is IAP Allergy and Applied Immunology chapter, and this is a new beginning which we have started, which is named as Allergy Forum. So, today is the inaugural edition of this very important session. And during these sessions, we are going to keep all the discussions based upon cases. So, there will be monthly sessions on every second Tuesday, which will be starting at 9 p.m. Indian time, and we will be choosing some cases. So those who are interested, they can submit their cases to us, and then we will try to incorporate as much as possible. We will choose the faculties for the cases by ourselves, and we will allocate one faculty to one presenter so that they can prepare the case. And thereafter, we will be going with the case-based discussions. So I hope that this new venture will be very helpful to all the practicing allergists as well as all the practicing pediatricians and practitioners. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Sanchana Bhatt, who is the national coordinator for Allergy Forum. So this particular exercise. So Dr. Sanchana, the stage is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Neeraj Gupta, sir. A very good evening to all of you. And we are very excited for this first inaugural session of this allergy forum. And for today's case discussion on atopic dermatitis, we have our expert, Dr. Deepthi Pujari, ma'am, from Pune. She's a consultant, senior consultant allergy specialist from Pune, working at Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital and Research Center, and her own Pujari's allergy center as well. And she's actually a EACI certified allergologist, a great academician and a very good teacher. And we are extremely privileged to have her for this session today. And the presenter is Dr. Radhika Kedia, a postgraduate from a DNB postgraduate from Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. And I think with this a very short introduction, we would just like to begin the session without much ado. Dr. Deepthi Pujari, ma'am, can we start the session then?
Yes, thank you so much, Sinchana and Dr. Neeraj Gupta, for having us here. I'm really honored to be present here. And it's a real great honor that Dr. Vedantan sir has graced this occasion. Pranam sir, we need your blessings. You are our guide throughout. So I now request Dr. Radhika to please present her case. What I'm thinking now, this being a teaching platform for general pediatricians, for allergy consultants, everyone. So what I'm thinking that as Radhika presents her case, we will discuss out some important points, some important issues, and we'll see how it goes by. And in the end, whatever there are some queries, audience wants to ask anything, Dr. Sanchana, you can note that down and we can solve the queries in the end. But as Dr. Radhika is presenting, we would just discuss on our way as the case progresses. So over to you, Dr. Radhika.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Hello, I'm Dr. Radhika Kedia from Sir Gangaram Hospital. It is a pleasure to be here to discuss an important and commonly encountered condition in pediatric practice, that is atopic dermatitis. So this is the case of a 7-month-old girl who presented to us with dry skin since birth and rashes over the face, chest, and back of knees since 1 month of age. The mother noticed that baby had dry skin since birth, over face, nape of neck, trunk, and back of knees, with scaling present. There was no bleeding, and it improved with moisturizer application. She also developed rashes on the face at 1 month of age, which were erythematous, flat, without well defined margins, not associated with discharge or blisters, and aggravated by massaging with oils such as coconut and olive oil. And it was also aggravated on wearing fleece. These rashes improved on applying moisturizer, and gradually the rashes progressed to involve the chest, back, and knees. This was associated with itching and night crying. There is also history of vomiting after consumption of formula milk. There was no history of noisy breathing, wheezing, or nasal congestion, which was taken to rule out allergic rhinitis. There was no history of blood and stools, which was taken to rule out any proctocolitis. There was no history of rash in the diaper area or the perioral area, which was taken to rule out any zinc deficiency in the patient. There was no hair loss or conjunctivitis or lethargy. This history was taken to rule out any biotin deficiency. There was no history of any blue or purple spots on the skin. This was taken to rule out thrombocytopenia, as that could be present in Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, which is a immunodeficiency disorder with eczema as a presentation. There was no history of failure to gain weight or length, or ear discharge, or recurrent infections or admission to the hospital. All these were asked to rule out any immunodeficiencies in the patient and histiocytosis.
Very good, Dr. Radhika. So you have taken very relevant negative history and covered almost everything. I was just wondering, were you expecting noisy breathing and wheezing or nasal congestion in this child? And if yes, why? And if no, why, please? Just, it's a pure discussion. Just feel free. What were your thoughts when you wrote this?
Ma'am, in infants who are presenting to us with atopic dermatitis, we also have to see any other allergic manifestations that are present, like allergic rhinitis. So that could suggest that they could be on the atopic march, which could provide a prognostication if the child could develop asthma in the later years.
Okay, very good. But just now you are looking for noisy breathing and wheezing even before, correct? So child
Yes,
is
ma'am.
now 7 months presented to you at the age of 7 months. Okay, so could be that filaggrin gene defect is seen both in atopic dermatitis as well as in asthma. There is that filaggrin null
Yes,
defect.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So that null mutation is present in asthmatics as well as in atopic dermatitis. So that could be the relevance here for saying that no wheezing was present. Very good. Otherwise, all your negative history looks relevant to me. Great. So we'll move ahead.
Yes, ma'am. The nutrition history, the baby was exclusively breastfed till 4 months of age. When at 4 months, the child was introduced to formula milk. It was noticed that she had repeated episodes of vomiting within 10 to 15 minutes of consumption of formula milk. The formula milk they were giving was Enfamil, which is a cow milk formula product, and this was eliminated from the diet after recurrent episodes were noticed. The mother also noticed that the rashes that were on the body increased in size within 2 hours of consumption of formula milk.
Okay. So there was rash after consumption, plus immediately there was vomiting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you want to comment on this?
Ma'am, this could suggest a component of food allergy in the child also, because immediately after consumption, within a few minutes, the child is having gastrointestinal symptoms in the form of vomiting, and the skin and the cutaneous manifestations are also reactive to the food allergen.
Perfect. Great. Good.
Immunization history, the child was immunized according to the American schedule, and there were no history of allergic reactions to the vaccination. BCG scar was present on the left arm. Family history, maternal aunt had a history of asthma, and she's on inhalers, regular inhalers for the same. And there is no history of dermatitis in the other family members. The child belonged to upper class according to modified Kopusamy scale. There were no pets at home. there were no indoor plantation at home, and there were no wet areas in the walls. The house was carpeted and it was regularly cleaned by vacuum. The house is also cleaned by wet mopping where applicable, and the apartment was well ventilated.
So, Dr. Radhika, if I may, just what were you thinking when you gave this socio-economic history? What were you thinking? Is just because it's a allergy forum, we need to discuss it for everyone to learn. So, what were you thinking when you said upper class? Does the class affect this condition?
Ma'am, generally, when we are looking at atopic diseases, there is a hygiene hypothesis where they say that if the child has been kept in very strict asepsis environment, then it could lead to a higher chance that the child could develop any allergic disorders in the future. So, if the child belongs to upper class in the Kupuswami scale, there is a higher chance that they were not there was no farm living, or the hygiene hypothesis could play a role in this
Very
pathogenesis.
so hygiene hypothesis plays a role in how does it play a role? What is it? What happens with the hygiene? What are you looking for?
Ma'am, when a child at a young age is exposed to a lot of pathogens, then there is a switch of the immunity from the type 2 helper response to a type 1 helper response, which decreases the chance of any allergic disorders happening. When it comes to atopic dermatitis, there is a increase in type 2 helper response, which could have been suppressed if the child was exposed to any pathogens.
Very good. And what about no pets at home? So pets should be there or they shouldn't be there? What is it?
Ma'am, pets, indoor plants, and all these were asked to rule out any aeroallergens that could have acted as triggers for the eczema in this child. So,
Okay.
cat and dogs, their dander could act as aeroallergens.
But it can act, it's a two-way sword, huh, Dr. Radhika? Because it is said if cats and dogs, if they are present in the first 6 months in infancy in a child's house, again, they increase the biodiversity of the dust that is present in the house. Okay, so dust has lot of microbiome. They have lot of bacteria that are present on the cat and the dog. So if the cats and dogs are present in early infancy, first 6 months, in fact, again, they help in diverting the immunity towards Th1 rather than Th2. So, environment, pollutants, these are all, the pollutants and all are bad, but pets in the first 6 months, they say are good. Otherwise, once you are allergic to pets, then you have to strictly avoid them. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, fungal infections are disastrous because we all know that will increase the skin irritation. Okay,
Yes,
very
ma'am.
good. Excellent. Go ahead, Dr. Radhika.
So this was the anthropometry that was done for the child. Weight was 7.5 kgs, which fell at the 50th centile. Height was 66 centimeters, which was somewhere between third and the 50th centile. The mid upper arm circumference was 15 centimeters. Head circumference was 44 centimeters, which is between the 50th and 97th centile. And weight for length was also appropriate. It was between 0 and +1 standard deviation. So the child did not have any wasting or stunting. The child was growing well. So here we could comment that there was no failure to thrive in the child, which could be a pointer that immunodeficiency goes further down in the differentials. General examination, the child was active and playful. There was no pallor, icterus, clubbing, cyanosis, lymphadenopathy, or edema. The vitals, heart rate was 90 beats per minute. It was regular, good in volume, and all peripheral pulses were palpable. Blood pressure was 94 by 56 millimeters of mercury, which is measured in the right arm via the auscultatory method. It was between the 50th and the 75th centile for the sex and height of the child. The child was crying at the time of measurement. Respiratory rate was 28 breaths per minute, and the breathing pattern was abdominothoracic in type. And the saturation in room air was 98%, and the child was afebrile during examination. Head to toe, we found that the AF was open, soft, at level, and the hair was normal in color and texture. Eyes were normal. There was no discharge in the external canal of the ears. Mouth and ears were normal. Chest was normal in shape. There were erythematous papules present over the chest and back. Axilla was normal. Abdomen was normal. Limbs showed erythematous rashes present over the popliteal region, and genitalia was normal. So this was the examination finding in the child. There were no petechiae or purpura on the skin. So we can see on both cheeks, we can see red rashes, and at the back, in the flexure portion of the popliteal region, we can see scaling and red rashes present. Similar rashes can also be seen in the nape of the neck and the back of the child. So there were multiple erythematous flat patches over both cheeks, nape of neck, chest, and popliteal fossa from size less than 5 millimeters to 4 centimeters in size. Rash was present in the flexure portion of the knees. Over here, it showed scaling as well. There were no scratch marks, excoriation, skin thickening, bleeding, oozing, crackling, or alteration of pigmentation present.
Very good. So this is a typical presentation for atopic dermatitis. That's exactly what you want to tell, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. Go ahead.
The other systemic examination, chest had bilateral vesicular breath sounds, abdomen was soft, umbilicus was central in position, and there was no hepatosplenomegaly. Cardiovascular system was normal. S1, S2 was present, and there were no added murmurs. And CNS examination was normal. The child was active, playful, and moving all 4 limbs. So to summarize my case, it was a 7-month-old girl who presented with generalized rashes over the face, chest, back of knees for 6 months. There was history of vomiting after consumption of formula feeds, and family history was significant as maternal aunt was a known case of asthma on inhalers. On examination, there were erythematous asymmetrical patches over both cheeks, nape of neck, patches on the back, and both flexure surface of knees. There was no history suggestive of immunodeficiencies in the child.
You did an excellent job, Dr. Radhika. A very well presented case. You have almost covered all the points in presentation. Your negative history was also very relevant. So excellent. So I'm just intrigued because now this child has atopic dermatitis, typical presentation for the age. The only issue is the milk is aggravating, correct?
Yes,
Was
ma'am.
the child weaned on any other food or was just given only milk? Because the child is now 7 months. What all other foods were given to the child?
Ma'am, the child was 7 months and they had not started any complementary feeds yet. They were just giving formula milk and breast milk to the child.
Okay. So otherwise, child was fine on breast milk.
Ma'am, from birth itself, the child had dry skin.
Yeah,
So
but
even
no vomiting as such.
no vomiting, no vomiting.
Okay. So perfect. Would you want to give any feeding advice to the mother at this point?
Yes, ma'am. I would advise that since the child is now 7 months of age, complementary feeds with single food groups could be started for the child in the form of other vegetables or legumes or fruits.
Okay. Any food you would suggest do not give?
Ma'am, because the history in this case is suggestive of cow milk allergy, we would start with a diagnostic elimination diet for the child. So for 2 to 4 weeks, we would suggest that she would have to stop all animal milk products to the child, and as long as she's breastfeeding, she would have to eliminate the same from her diet as well.
Cow's milk, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So as of now, we'll keep there. So let's see. What do you have to do? Very good, very well presented. Go ahead, Dr. Radhika.
These were the differential diagnosis: atopic dermatitis, contact dermatitis, seborrheic dermatitis, nutrient deficiencies, scabies, and immunodeficiency.
Okay. Are you thinking of contact dermatitis here?
Ma'am, they had given a history that after the application of the coconut oil and this one, the rashes worsened.
Okay.
And So that was making us think of contact dermatitis as well. But then we came to the family history where there was a positive atopic history in the family. So this went further down the differential list.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Go ahead.
So these were the investigations that were sent for the child. Hemoglobin was 11 grams per deciliter. TLC was 8400 with differentials. Neutrophils were 68%. Lymphocytes were 28%, and eosinophils were 4%. Platelets were normal, 2.34 lakhs. CRP and ESR were within normal limits. And total IG was 225 international units per ml, which was raised. Milk specific IG was sent in the serum for the child, which was also 20 international units per ml, which was raised, and soy specific IgE was negative.
Very good. Go ahead.
So, with this, we had given a diagnosis of atopic dermatitis with cow's milk allergy for the child.
Go ahead.
So for the management, we advised cutaneous hydration, which included moisturizer therapy and soaking the child right after bathing the child with lukewarm water. They would have to apply moisturizers. Then topical corticosteroids were also prescribed, and anti-itch medications in the form of oral fexofenadine syrup was given. Nutrition, soy milk was introduced, and now all cow milk containing products were stopped in the mother's diet as well as the child's diet. So now when the child is coming to for follow-up, she does not have any active lesions, and she's gaining weight, length, and she's off steroids.
So very good. So child was well controlled, well managed with the local moisturizers, cutaneous hydration.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
That's perfect. And the milk and milk products were totally eliminated from the diet, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Dr. Radhika.
So we can come to the topic discussion of atopic dermatitis and cow's milk allergy. So atopic dermatitis is also known as eczema. It is the most common chronic relapsing skin disease in infants and children. Atopic march. Infants with eczema are predisposed to develop food allergy, allergic rhinitis, and asthma later in childhood. So this phenomenon is known as atopic march. Eczema is a complex genetic disorder that leads to a defective skin barrier. This reduces the innate immunity response of the skin and it results in extreme responses to environmental allergens and microbes. So here is the pathology. This disease affects the barrier. So when there is a barrier dysfunction, it leads to loss of water from the epidermal region, and it also makes the skin more susceptible to attack by the allergens. So when this happens, the T helper 2 cells are activated, and this leads to increase in cytokines such as interleukin 4, 13, and 31. Interleukin 4 and 13 are responsible for isotype switching of B cells to IgE cells. And this is responsible for the acute reaction that we see in the atopic dermatitis, where we have responses such as the rashes and itching. Interleukin 31 is responsible for the itching. And in chronic atopic dermatitis lesions, T helper 22, 17, and type 1 play a bigger role. The acute atopic dermatitis lesions are characterized by spongiosis. This is the intercellular edema which is present in the cells. Chronic lesions are characterized by hyperplastic epidermis with hyperkeratosis and minimal spongiosis. Mast cells and eosinophils are increased, which lead to increased skin inflammation. Two forms have been recognized, that is atopic eczema and non-atopic eczema. Atopic eczema is more prevalent. It occurs in 70 to 80% of the patients with atopic dermatitis, and non-atopic is less common. That is non-IG mediated. But both of these types of eczema have eosinophilia. So in acute atopic dermatitis, we have higher levels of interleukin 4 and 13. And in chronic atopic dermatitis, we have a higher level of interleukin 5, GM-CSF, interleukin 12, and interferon gamma.
Okay, just go back to that slide. Okay, so any other, no, this only acute and chronic, which you said. any other differentiating point? Do you know what is extrinsic atopic dermatitis and intrinsic atopic dermatitis?
No, ma'am, I'm not
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No issues. Actually, what you said, acute atopic dermatitis, interleukin 4, 13, 31, these are high. So that is your extrinsic atopic dermatitis, isn't it? Almost 70 to 80% what we see is due to raised IG, interleukin 4, 5, 13, filaggrin mutation, and early onset. As against this, the intrinsic atopic dermatitis, there is a, have you heard of this theory called repeated hapten exposure? So, you know what are haptens, Dr. Radhika? Low molecular weight substances, correct?
Yes,
Less than
ma'am.
1,000 molecular weight, like metals, even nickel, cobalt, or some drugs, preservatives. Why we say these are all the triggers? Because it is now hypothesized that low molecular weight substances like drugs, preservatives, when applied to the broken skin, they cause contact dermatitis. But on repeated exposure, on the broken skin, they lead to Th2 pathway stimulation, leading to atopic dermatitis. So the T pathway, T1 pathway, or delayed hypersensitivity pathway is shifted to Th2 pathway due to repeated exposure to the haptens by this broken skin. Biochemically, if you see, interleukin 4 is not that high in these patients, but in this hapten atopy hypothesis, interleukin 22, interleukin 17 are very high. So mostly intrinsic eczema we see later in life, which is Th1 dominant. Skin barrier is normal, but late onset atopic dermatitis, females, there where metal allergy, contact dermatitis is also high. This is your hapten hypothesis. Th1 switching over to Th2 called intrinsic atopic dermatitis. Okay, because there also GM-CSF, interferon gamma, interleukin 5, 22, and 17 are high. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. And any idea why there is such high pruritus in these patients? Because you said pruritus was a major complaint. So causes for pruritus and atopic dermatitis?
Ma'am, there is also interleukin 31, which is responsible for the pruritus that happens
Perfect.
in these.
Perfect. Any other pathway? So interleukin 31, definitely this cytokine acts on the dorsal root ganglion of the peripheral nerves and causes severe itch. One more important, why I'm bringing this out, because that will help us in management. Why I'm getting these points. So one more very important pathway for pruritus is via your Janus kinase inhibitors. Interleukin 4 and 13. They also can produce itch by JAK signaling, Janus kinase signaling, and they reduce the threshold for other pruritogens and histamines. So two ways, by Janus kinase and by interleukin 31. So either way you inhibit, the pruritus will decrease. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Radhika. Great.
The hallmark of atopic dermatitis is severely dry skin. There is a defect in the skin barrier which leads to increased transdermal water loss, allergen penetration, and microbe colonization. Filaggrin is one of the most important structural proteins in the epidermis. It has been noted that in almost 50% patients with severe AD, FLG null mutations have been identified. This mutation is strongly associated with food allergy and eczema herpeticum as well. So the clinical features that we see are usual age of presentation is infancy. The child will present to us with intense pruritus and skin reactions. Irritants that are known to increase these rashes are food allergens such as cow milk, egg, peanut, tree nuts, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. Aeroallergens such as pollen, fungal spores, animal dander, and dust mite. Infections with Staph aureus, HSV, Coxsackie, and Molluscum contagiosum. Reduced humidity, sweating, and abrasive substances such as wool, and irritants such as soap, toiletries, scents, and detergents. So we can describe AD in 3 categories. We have acute lesions, subacute lesions, and chronic atopic dermatitis. In acute lesions, we will see erythematous papules. In subacute lesions, we will see red, excoriated scaling papules. And in chronic AD, lichenification and fibrotic papules will be present. The area which is affected by AD is generally different in infants and in older children. So when we have an infant presenting to us with AD, the lesions will usually be present on the face, scalp, and the extensor surfaces. However, for older children, we'll usually see that flexure areas of the body are involved. So lab findings, atopic dermatitis is a clinical diagnosis. Peripheral blood might show eosinophilia and raised IgE levels. Serum IgE measurement and skin prick test can identify the allergens. So for the diagnosis, 3 major features are required, including pruritus, eczematous dermatitis, and chronic relapsing course. Family history of asthma, hay fever, raised Ig increases the suspicion of AD. So this is the scoring which is done for atopic dermatitis, which has 3 components. One is the area, which follows the rule of 9. Second is the intensity. So here we'll see the redness, swelling, oozing or crusting, scratch marks, lichenification or dryness that is present, and subjective symptoms will be scored on the basis of itchiness and sleeplessness. It is scored from a scale of 0 to 10. So 0 would be least itchy and least sleeplessness nights, and 10 would be the most irritating. If the child gets a score of less than 25, it is a mild disease. 25 to 50 is a moderate disease, and more than 50 is a severe disease. These are the differentials that we had discussed in the case presentation as well. So the first differential could be a dermatophyte infection. However, in these infections, there is a central clearing. In scabies, itchy burrows are present on the intertriginous regions, including the genitals. Zinc deficiency will be associated with red scaly patches and plaques around the mouth and the anal area. Biotin deficiency will be associated with periorofacial dermatitis, alopecia, and conjunctivitis. In SCID, we will see a failure to thrive, diarrhea, rash, recurrent skin, and systemic infections. In histiocytosis, we'll usually see an infant which comes to us with atopic dermatitis and a failure to thrive. Viscod-Aldrich syndrome is an immunodeficiency disorder where thrombocytopenia, eczema, and recurrent severe bacterial infections will be present. In contact dermatitis, there'll be no history of atopy in the childhood or family history. So severity of AD, we can have clear skin. That means there is normal skin and there's no evidence of rashes. Mild AD is when there are areas of dry skin and there is infrequent itching. Moderate atopic dermatitis is dry skin with frequent itching, redness with or without excoriation. In severe is when there is a widespread areas of xerosis with incessant itching, redness, with or without excoriation, intensive skin thickening, bleeding, oozing, cracking, or alteration in pigmentation. So we'll come to the treatment of atopic dermatitis.
Okay,
The
just
first,
one minute, Dr. Radhika. Excellent. You have done a wonderful job. I should really congratulate you. So I'm really happy you brought down this point of biotin, that it increases the condition. Any foods or vitamin you know which will worsen the condition? Any guesses? Have you heard of, do you know which are histaminergic foods?
ma'am,
Huh?
hello,
Yeah, go ahead.
ma'am, food groups such as milk, egg, shellfish, and peanuts, these are known to have to be more allergic. So these should be avoided.
Okay. Yeah, could be if a person is allergic to these food, they could be allergic. No, I was asking what are, histamine releasing foods. But just now you said about biotin, so I would like to quickly add here niacin is one vitamin that is present in meat, poultry, and some grains and legumes. It can in fact trigger a flare-up of atopic dermatitis. The reason being, niacin, it activates the receptors present in Langerhans cells. And then they release prostaglandin causing lot of inflammation, erythema, itching and stinging sensation, especially if the temperature of the skin rises. So niacin could be a culprit. If you see, sometimes we tell modifying diets to patients with atopic dermatitis. So if you see patient is eating legumes and suddenly the rash increases, and when you do the skin prick test, it is negative. So it need not be every time IgE mediated, but some foods like meat, poultry, fish, legumes, they could be causing the trouble via niacin pathway. Now, there are some foods, especially fermented foods, okay? Sour creams, aged cheese, fermented cheese, fermented tofu, lot of fermentation also increases histamine. So again, sometimes parents come, he eats curd and gets a lot of rash. If you, and he drinks milk, he's fine. It's not that he's allergic to milk protein, but again, the fermentation, the sourness, the process of aging itself increases the histamine and can cause the flaring up of atopic dermatitis. And one more very important, that there is this diamine oxidase inhibitors, especially some alcohol, wine, and again sour foods, even a black and green tea. They are also known, bananas, they are known to inhibit diamine oxidase. And what is the work of diamine oxidase? It breaks down histamine. Now its deficiency, the histamine won't get broken down. It will stay in the blood for longer duration and you'll get lot of flare-ups. So some thought should be given for histaminergic food, those that increase histamine due to preventing breakdown, and those that causes the flare-ups due to release of histamine from the body. Okay, and some food, they're just high in histamine content. All are aged cheese, fermented foods. So they are very high in histamine. So just you should remember about histaminergic foods. Okay, Dr. Radhika?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
The treatment of atopic dermatitis, the first and foremost is cutaneous hydration. Moisturizers are first-line therapy. Hydration by bathing or wet dressing also increases the penetration of glucocorticoids. Then topical corticosteroids. There are 7 classes of glucocorticoids that are based on the potency. Long-term control can also be achieved by twice weekly application of fluticasone or mometasone to problem areas, which are more prone to getting the lesions again and again. So here are the topical corticosteroids. So class 1, we have clobetasol and halobetasol. Class 2, we have betamethasone and halcinonide. Class 3, we have fluticasone. Class 4, we have mometasone. Class 5, we have betamethasone dipropionate. Class 6, we have betamethasone valerate. And class 7, we have hydrocortisone acetate. So this is in order of decreasing potency. Generally, strong steroids and very potent steroids are avoided in the face area. There can be side effects of the steroids, which can be local or systemic. Local side effects include striae and skin atrophy, and systemic side effects include adrenal suppression. Then the third treatment.
Just one moment, Dr. Radhika. Very good, excellent. Huh? So very well said. Really happy the way you are presenting. One quick word on, atopic dermatitis is all about dry skin, dry skin, dry skin. So moist, keeping the skin moist is the key to the treatment, correct?
Yes.
Rest, everything is just add-on. So what exact advice will you give to the parents? Because, this child which you are presenting was almost, you said there was rash since day 1. So what advice would you give to the parents regarding moisturizer? Which moisturizer? First thing they'll ask which is the best, then what about the cost? So how will you deal with this thing called moisturizer? Do you know which categories or types or anything? What
Yes.
time of the day you'll apply? When will you apply?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, moisturizers can be occlusive moisturizers, which occlude the barrier, so they prevent loss of hydration from the skin. And then there is hydrating moisturizers, which attract hydration to the skin. So in occlusive moisturizers, we can have moisturizers which have petroleum as one of the main components. It prevents the loss of hydration through the skin. And then for hydrating moisturizers, we can have they have humectants in them, including glycerin, which attracts moisture to the skin.
Okay, very good. So what will you advise when to apply?
Ma'am, we will ask them to apply it after a lukewarm bath for 15 to 20 minutes, and immediately when the child comes from the bath, they have to just apply the moisturizer all over the body.
Perfect. And any advice would you give for bathing? What should be the temperature of the water, which soaps? Because remember, this is all about skin, maintaining the skin nice and wet. We don't want to go to the steroids if possible. So how do we tell them? How will they maintain the skin?
Ma'am, we'll ask them to use a soap with a neutral pH, and the soap should not be scented to avoid any irritation to the skin.
Okay, better than neutral pH, what would it be? What is the normal pH of the skin?
Ma'am,
It-
normally, normally it is alkaline in this.
No, I think it's acidic. So we would want that they should have, some soaps that are not too alkaline, if at all, towards low pH. Okay, towards the acidic pH to neutral pH. Hypoallergenic, and that they are called what? Syndates, correct? They don't
Yes,
have detergents. So syndates, which are fragrant free, which are chemical free, and they shouldn't be having too much of froth and bubble. So, and lukewarm water, correct? We don't want whatever little oil is there, we don't want it to be washed off with hot water. And bathing time shouldn't be more than 5 to 10 minutes. That would be enough. Anything about, so once you pat dry the skin, immediately you would want them to apply moisturizer on the whole body, correct?
yes, ma'am.
What about oil massage, Dr. Radhika?
Ma'am, oil massages are generally they can be given, but generally we ask them to avoid it because that can also act as irritants to the skin.
Yeah. So simple refined coconut oil should be fine, but otherwise, harsh food products should be avoided on the skin. So even they say any vegetable oil, if a child is allergic, can lead to flare-up. So simple refined coconut oil before the bath, then a lukewarm water bath with syndates, which are low in pH, with a quick pad dry and application of moisturizer should be the routine. Okay, because telling everything about bathing is very, very important, because that's how they will maintain their skin moist. Okay, and have you heard anything about bleach bath?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we can advise them for bleach baths where they have to use around 0.005% of bleach, and this can be done twice or thrice weekly to decrease the severity of the lesions.
Okay, very good. So mostly it will be twice a week, and we advise them when there is lot of bacterial colonization. Okay. So
Yes, it
every time
reduces staph
using,
colonization.
yes, perfect. So we ask them to use at least twice a week for at least 6 to 8 weeks. And the bacterial colonization goes down. Again, the bleach bath should not be for more than 10 to 15 minutes soaking in the bleach water. And for rough guidance, small spoonful of bleach, that is sodium hypochlorite, should be enough for a tub of water. That's a rough guideline you can give to the parents, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And very nice, very nice. Anything about wet wrap therapy? You know what is wet wrap therapy?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, wet wrapping is also used. So we'll take dressing, which is to be soaked in lukewarm water, and that is applied over the skin of the child. Over here also, we have to guide them to not use them for too long because they, after a point, they also lose their moisture, and applying this can lead to better penetration of glucocorticoids on the skin.
Very good. So wherever there is lot of exfoliation, lot of dryness and active lesions, there you can apply, correct? So
Yes.
you keep a moist gauze, and on top of it, it, to keep the gauze moist, you can put another cotton cloth around it so that the inside bandage remains moist. And this you can leave for, as long as the child is comfortable. That's what I'll say, because the child gets irritated with those wet bandages around. So that is one thing, because as we said, it's just dry skin condition. We have to keep the skin, no matter what, we have to keep the skin moist. So this is one way we can keep it, just wet wrap therapy by bandaging it with wet gauze pieces. Perfect. Very good. So now you were talking about steroid. How much steroid? A quick guidance for, let's finish off the topic as a whole, because this being a teaching platform, a quick word on how much steroid. Liberal use like moisturizer, very minimal use. What is the optimal dose of steroid?
Ma'am, we asked the caregiver to apply the steroid cream over the fingertip. So from the tip of the finger to the first DIP, that is to be covered, and that has to be applied over all the lesions. So if it is less for the lesions, you can mix it in moisturizer and then you can apply the steroids over the body.
Okay, so yes, very good. So Dr. Radhika, so very well said. So, one fingertip unit, it is called, what you said, from the tip of the finger to the first distal phalangeal crease, that much of steroid should be applied to 2 palm size area. Okay, whoever is the fingertip, that person's 2 palm size area to be covered over the patient's or child's skin. When all the fingers, all 10 fingers of the palms are kept together. Did you get an idea, Dr. Radhika?
Yes, ma'am.
So one fingertip unit, because what if the lesions are too many? That your one fingertip unit will not cover all the lesions. And as you said, will dilute it with moisturizer. Then it won't have any effect. If you want, if you have chosen a particular class of steroid, you want that class of steroid should be applied on the child's skin. Then you'll have to cover one fingertip unit equivalent to 2 palm size area on the child's body. And if suppose there is more area that is affected, you'll again take one fingertip unit and cover. Suppose you little bit is remaining, you'll take half fingertip unit. So one fingertip unit will cover 2 palm size area when all the fingers, 10 fingers are kept close together. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, perfect. So, and for how long will you give, and when will you switch over to the next step? How long will you give topical corticosteroids? So you'll always start with the lowest possible, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Lowest potency.
Yeah. So, and you have very well mentioned twice a week. How long will you go with the topical corticosteroids?
Ma'am, if it is an acute exacerbation, then we have to ask them to apply it twice a day.
Okay, very good. Perfect. Perfect, Dr. Radhika. So you can classify it as reactive therapy and proactive therapy. So when there is very acute flare-up, you want twice daily application for at least 2 weeks, and then you ask them to follow up. So just you have to remove their steroid phobia. The child is very irritable, the lesions are oozing, the child is scratchy, itching, the whole family is disturbed. Topical steroids are the wonder drugs. They work well. You have to remove that steroid phobia and give a good dose. You'll not cause overdosing if you follow this one fingertip unit is equal to 2 palm size area, because that is what research proven is sufficient. So this much should be given for at least 2 weeks. Then we need to ask them to come for a follow-up. And then we need to step down on the strength of steroid if the child is having a good control. And in proactive therapy, we continue it twice weekly applications for at least, you can even go up to 8 to 10 to 12 weeks till the disease comes well under control with liberal use of emollients. So always the emollients should be first, and after that on the moist skin, after 15, 20 or almost half an hour of applying emollients, then one should apply steroids. So steroids should always go on a well hydrated moist skin. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Radhika.
Uh, Another treatment method is topical calcineurin inhibitors, which come in the form of pimecrolimus cream or tacrolimus cream. These are approved for moderate to severe AD, and it is approved for short-term use in 2 years in children 2 years and above. Then we have phosphodiesterase inhibitors. Crisaborole is an approved PDE4 inhibitor for mild to moderate AD. It can be used in aged 3 months and above. Tar preparations are also there. They have anti-inflammatory and antipruritic properties, but they are not as effective as glucocorticoids. They can, however, be used in scalp dermatitis. Then we have antihistamines, systemic antihistamines such as fexofenadine, cetirizine. They can help with pruritus, and they can also have a sedative effect. So the child could be calm during night. Systemic corticosteroids
Very
are
good.
there.
So just one minute, Dr. Radhika. Perfect. Very well said. So you'll use, after that, you can use calcineurin inhibitors because again, they are anti-inflammatory drugs. They inhibit interleukin-4 and 13. So bring down the inflammation, and then topical phosphodiesterase 4 inhibitors. The reason why they work is because they decrease the production of inflammatory cytokines like 4, 13, and 31 and bring down the inflammation. And as very well said, crisaborole can be given above 2 years of age. Okay. And again, advised in mild to moderate atopic dermatitis. One more important point I would like to the upcoming thing on the card is Janus kinase inhibitors. Remember I said Janus kinase is a pathway which gives lot of pruritus. So again, Janus kinase pathways are involved in signaling various cytokines like 4, interleukin 4, 13, 31, 22, 17, almost all. So it is found that JAK inhibitors, they decrease atopic dermatitis severity and are found very useful in moderate to severe atopic dermatitis. Especially they are, if we cannot use steroids for a long time, so then Janus kinase can be given a try. And we have topical Janus kinase inhibitors like ruxolitinib and daglocitinib. They are still upcoming, not very much available in India. But they have been licensed in children and in adults, in children above 6 years. So they are upcoming. One important point I would like to make about calcineurin inhibitors, their major drawback is, would you like to say that one major drawback and one good effect why you give calcineurin, why you are not continuing with steroids? Why do you want topical calcineurin inhibitors like tacrolimus?
Ma'am, steroids can lead to toxicity.
Perfect. Perfect. So topical calcineurin inhibitors, they can be applied even on face. What if child has severe atopic dermatitis, severe scaling, redness, erythema on the eyelids? Steroids are very risky to apply there. They all cause thinning of the skin. So here there are places where steroids cannot be used. Topical calcineurin inhibitors come to the rescue. Especially, the 0.03% tacrolimus is approved for less than 15 years and it is a very good drug. The only issue with this is if there are acute flare-ups, they cause lot of stinging and burning sensation. So children don't tolerate them. The moment you give them, they'll come back in 2 days that it's impossible. It gives severe burning and stinging sensation. So the best way to do is first go ahead with emollients and steroid. Let the thing in a proactive and reactive stage, let the skin settle down, and once you want to taper the steroids, then you bring in your topical calcineurin inhibitors, and they are called steroid sparing agents because in their maintenance phase they can be even given safely up to a year. So literature says for reactive phase here you can give for 2 to 6 weeks, and for proactive stage it can be even given for easily 6 months, 1 year, to maintain the skin so that steroids can be spared. So that is one very important point. First, calm the skin down with topical steroids. When that stinging sensation goes off, then you use topical calcineurin inhibitors. And you have to counsel the parents that the stinging sensation anyway goes off in 2 to 3 weeks. So just the initial 7 to 10 days are bad, and then the child gets used to them. So especially when you don't want your cataracts, glaucomas, and skin atrophies, facial and eyelid skin, there you can use your tacrolimus. Okay, so tacrolimus, that is calcineurin inhibitors, Janus kinase inhibitors, these are the upcoming, and your topical phosphodiesterase inhibitors. So once now we are done with topical, let's come to the systemic therapy. So go ahead, Dr. Radhika.
Ma'am, in systemic therapy, we have systemic corticosteroids. However, they are rarely indicated. It is a double-edged sword. So when we give systemic corticosteroids, there would be a dramatic improvement in the symptoms. But after we stop systemic corticosteroids, it can lead to a severe rebound flare. So we have to be very careful while using systemic corticosteroids, and we would have to taper the therapy. Then next option is cyclosporin, which acts on the T cells by suppressing cytokine gene transcription. It is used in severe and refractory atopic dermatitis, and side effects include renal impairment and hypertension. Dupilumab is another monoclonal antibody. It binds to the interleukin-4 receptor and inhibits signaling of interleukin-4 and 13. It is involved in the pathogenesis of atopic dermatitis. It leads to reduced pruritus and improves the skin clearing. It is also indicated in moderate to severe atopic dermatitis after 6 years of age. Then we have antimetabolites such as mycophenolate mofetil, methotrexate, and azathioprine. Before these drugs are used, a referral should be sought to an atopic dermatitis specialist. And other therapies are used such as phototherapy, omalizumab, allergen immunotherapy, probiotics, vitamin D, and interferon gamma.
Very good. So just again, for the sake of completeness, we'll quickly talk one quick word on methotrexate. Again, see, dupilumab is the king. It is the ultimate drug that we need to use because interleukin-4, interleukin-13, the culprits, it just goes and hits. It's called the precision medicine. It is the drug of the day. But it's extremely expensive. Dupilumab, cost is exuberant. It is available in India now, but it's one injection, 2 injections are for 50,000. As against this, methotrexate tablets are very less. They are in tens and hundreds of rupees. So methotrexate, it is said, it is approved in children and it can be given orally once a week. It has to be given 0.2 to 0.4 milligram per kg per week is the dose. And it is said that you have to wait for 8 to 12 weeks before declaring that methotrexate is not working. And even after that, you have to switch from oral to subcutaneous route and again give it for 8 to 12 weeks. And only then, if it is not working, you say that, okay, methotrexate is not working. So patient needs to be monitored properly for at least 2 to 3 months. And the maximum dose that can be given is 25 milligram per kg. And again, methotrexate is, poor man's dupilumab. That's what you can say. It gives a very good control. Of course, you have to do renal monitoring, liver monitoring, CBC at least once in 2 months, if not more frequent. Cyclosporin, methotrexates, they are very well tolerated and useful drugs, especially in our Indian scenario, where the patients have to bear the cost of all the expensive drugs. And again, Janus kinase oral drugs are also there. Janus kinase inhibitors like your tofacitinib and some abrocitinib, some drugs are there. Then, of course, your biologicals. Dupilumab is the king, as I said, because it decreases the skin barrier. It blocks the pathways that are causing all the troubles. Your interleukin-4 receptor, it acts on alpha subunit. The alpha subunit is shared by interleukin-4 and 13 both. So the full pathway gets blocked, the pruritus decreases, the Th2 differentiation decreases, and all the inflammatory cytokines, they come down and the skin heals. The only issue is the cost. Now it has even been approved from 6 months onwards. First it was 18 years and now it has come down to 6 months also. Of course, the dose is different. I think it's almost 10 o'clock. but it's clear-cut written what should be the dose. For very small, below 15 kgs, it is 200 milligrams subcutaneously once a month. And from 15 kgs to 30 kgs, it is 300 milligrams subcutaneously once a month. That is 4 weekly. It's only above 6 years of age, you have to give a loading dose first. So either it could be 600 milligram or 400 milligram, depending upon the weight of the child. You have to give loading dose, and then the maintenance dose is half of the loading dose every 2 weekly. So that is about dupilumab, the wonder drug at present. Before that, we definitely used omalizumab. Again, omalizumab is not cheap. If the weight is about 30-40 kgs, you have to give 300 milligrams subcutaneously once a month. Again, the cost goes to 30,000 rupees a month. Dupilumab goes up to almost 1 lakh a month if you are giving twice monthly. So these are all expensive. Omalizumab is anti-IgE. So where IgE is very high, it really works well. But again, as long as you are continuing, it will work. The moment you stop after 2, 3, 4 months, the disease might just flare up. And it has not shown effect in all. In almost 60 to 70% patients show a good response. Rest remaining 30 to 40% don't even show response when the drug is on. So injection omalizumab has its own side effects. You have to monitor the child, especially for the first 2, 3 injections have to be given in your good hospital setting, because it itself can give a good anaphylaxis reaction. So ultimately, we can say good skin hydration is the key. And dupilumab, once we all start using, I'm quite sure its price will also come down. So that's it. Any other thing, anything else that you would like to mention, Dr. Radhika?
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
this was just a step ladder we had made for the treatment of atopic dermatitis depending on the severity. Uh, and these are the triggers that we have to avoid. So if the child is a known case of atopic dermatitis, then irritants such as soap, smoke, chemicals, abrasive clothing, and extremes of temperature should be avoided. Food allergies are present in 40% infants with moderate to severe AD. So removal of food from diet may lead to clinical improvement. Same goes for aeroallergens. Aeroallergens should be, children with atopic dermatitis should be protected from these, such as dust mites. And they have a higher susceptibility to bacterial infections, such as bacterial, viral, and fungal infections. Complications can include exfoliative dermatitis, atopic keratoconjunctivitis, and keratoconus. Prognosis, it is more severe in children with null mutations in filaggrin genes, and spontaneous resolution has occurred after 5 years in 40 to 60% cases. Predictive factors for poor prognosis include widespread atopic dermatitis, nil mutations in filaggrin, allergic rhinitis and asthma, family history of atopic dermatitis in parents or siblings, early onset AD, or only child with very high IgE levels. So, breastfeeding may be beneficial for prevention of AD, and if a child is diagnosed with food allergy, mother needs to eliminate implicated food allergen from her diet as well.
I think perfect. We'll not go on cow's milk allergy. We'll stick to atopic dermatitis at the moment. You have done an excellent job, Dr. Radhika. I have to really, really congratulate you. I'm seeing one question. It's which emollient should be used? Sorry, which moisturizer to be used? So all are good. One has to make sure that patient is able to afford it. The emollients could be very expensive because they are considered best, as they instill small droplets of oil into the cracks between the desquamating cells, the skin cells, the corneocytes, and ultimately improve the appearance of the skin. So they are considered the best. Your linoleic acid, linolenic acid, oleic acid, these emollients are considered best, but they are very expensive. So our simple Vaseline petroleum jelly, liquid paraffin, glycerol, they all do the job, whatever suits the parents. But the underlying thing is liberal use of moisturizer. If you prescribe a very fancy, very expensive moisturizer and they are unable to afford it, they'll use it very little. So the key point is liberal use of moisturizer. Emollients are the best because they repair the skin. Otherwise, the one thing I would like to stress here is food elements should be avoided. Like lot of moisturizers have peanut oils, almond oils, oatmeal oils. These food products should be avoided in the skin, and the moisturizers that contain food products should be avoided because they can sensitize the skin. Unless these food products are in extensively hydrolyzed form, they are in amino acid form, their protein structure has been broken, only then they should be used. So perfect job done by Dr. Radhika. Yes, and I would, before we end up, I would really request all of you, under the leadership, chairmanship of Dr. Neeraj Gupta, we are organizing a Ped Elocon in New Delhi on the 10th, 11th, and 12th of October. And this is the barcode. I would request everyone to please scan this and register. It is going to be the feast for your brains and ears. Almost 10 international faculties, they have already confirmed they are coming in person to Delhi. So it is going to be a wonderful academic feast. I would request everyone, please scan this barcode and try and attend to and make it a wonderful event. Thank you. I'm more than happy to take the questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for that excellent session and making this topic so clinically relevant for all of us and discussing it so beautifully. And thank you, Dr. Radhika. You did an excellent job by presenting this case so well. And each of the practical points were discussed in detail. And I'm sure it would have benefited the attendees. And I can't see any questions in the chat box as of now. So any other things?
We have overshot the time, looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 10:05 then. No, ma'am, it was okay, no problem. So it was really nice because this is a very important topic which each pediatrician comes across in day-to-day
Dr.
practice.
Sanchana, Dr. Dhanesh here. I have one question for
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dipti. Yeah, these patients' food milk allergy was thought of. So is it that in patients wherever there is a risk, we should screen for food allergy in atopic dermatitis?
Sorry, nowhere it is written that we should screen for milk allergies or food allergies. This patient had clear-cut one-to-one relation. Whenever the child was given cow's milk, the child vomited immediately within 15 minutes and in 2 hours time had developed urticarial rash also. So it was very clear that this child had milk allergy, and so milk elimination diet was given. And serum specific Ig showed it was 20 Ku per liter. But otherwise, routinely, we would not screen unless we are getting a good history. Routinely, for all patients, we would not screen for all food allergies.
And this patient is risk for asthma in future, an allergic march. Yeah, can it be prevented if we give a good care of atopic dermatitis?
Yes, this is the million-dollar question. So I knew this would come up. I did a lot of reading. So it is said to some extent you can prevent atopic march. Why does this atopic march happen in the first place? Because IgE stimulation is continuously there. And why is IgE stimulation there? Because there is Th2 pathway. Why is it there? Because lot of allergens, irritants are entering through the skin because of the filaggrin gene defect. And because of lot of inflammation is happening, the skin is not getting repaired. So more inflammation. So this itch, scratch, itch cycle is continuing. So it is said to prevent this atopic march, to prevent the sensitization of further allergens, to heal this, to decrease IgE, to prevent neosensitization. The only way all this can be done is by proper skin care. So that's why maintaining the skin with liberal use of moisturizer, adequate use of steroids, and then maintaining it adequately with calcineurin inhibitors is the key. And wherever person is able to afford, dupilumab is the next thing that can be done. So to
Yeah,
some
and
extent, yes, it can be
yeah,
prevented.
yeah. And if supposing this patient goes on or not properly managed, and then later on develop the wheezing also, and if you find the dust mite sensitization and all above 5, 6 years of age, and developing asthma and all, does immunotherapy will benefit both respiratory and even atopic dermatitis? Because immunotherapy also is mentioned for atopic dermatitis also.
Yes, sir. Atopic dermatitis, for in your case, the scenario which you gave, definitely immunotherapy will work, because you are saying the child has developed asthma, house dust mite is positive. Of course, it will work. Now it is said in atopic dermatitis, if you find that child is severely, strongly positive for house dust mite, there is a chance that you will benefit this child, because giving immunotherapy to house dust mite in a patient of atopic dermatitis will prevent neosensitization and decrease the inflammation and decrease IgE. So again, it will prevent atopic march even if the patient has not developed asthma. It's pure atopic dermatitis with severe house dust mite sensitization. There also immunotherapy is indicated. In selected cases, it will be patient to patient. But yes, once the patient has developed asthma, you don't want severe allergic rhinitis, you don't want to go in that path, you will definitely give immunotherapy for house dust mites.
Only last one, madam. That's probiotic. We have not thought about it. There are a lot of probiotics in the market and all. Should be given like this and will have help.
Okay. So, again, see, atopic dermatitis is a dysbiotic skin condition. It is very important to remember. It's not just high IgE or something. It is a dysbiotic skin condition because TSLP, thymic stromal lymphopoietin, it regulates the bacterial content of the skin. The corneocytes are disrupted. Filaggrin gene defect is there. What it is seen that Staphylococcus aureus increases and epidermidis decreases. So there is lot of dysbiosis going on, especially in the skin microbiota and in skin gut axis and in skin brain axis. So all these things are there. That's why it is said the Mediterranean diet. Why they're so strongly in favor of Mediterranean diet, Indian diet? Because they help in maintaining the gut bacteria in such a way that it decreases the inflammation. That's why it is said atopic dermatitis patients have high chances of developing eosinophilic esophagitis also. Psoriatic patients, they develop Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Why? Because there is skin gut axis that is in connection with each other. So yes, probiotics do work, but which probiotic, which age it should be started, for how long to be given, which combination of probiotics should be given, all this is still under research process. I was going through so many papers before coming to this session, and everyone, so many trials had contradictory statements. So there is nothing concrete, but atopic dermatitis is one condition where probiotics, if at all, will work, because there is dysbiosis of skin microbiota in this condition. If you ask me in allergic rhinitis, in asthma, we don't know. Again, in all these conditions, it should be started as early as possible. Dr. Major Nagaraju sir used to say, even in infancy and in a mother's womb, if there is a strong family history of atopic dermatitis, asthma. So in the fetus, in the first 6 months. Now, some studies say it should be started at 3 years of age. Why? Because mother's microbiota and the probiotic that we give will clash and there will be a fight between them. So again, as I said, all these things are in the pipeline. There are studies going on, but in atopic dermatitis, as of now, we can say a good Indian diet with lot of vegetables, lot of fresh foods, lot of, healthy Indian diet, village life is the key to treatment. And microbiota, especially or Lactobacillus rhamnosus, GG, reuteri, all these have shown good effect. We don't know for how long, at least for 8 to 12 weeks to show some effect. They'll not cause any magical cure, but definitely they are supportive and will help in healing the skin.
Thank you. Very nice case presentation by Radhika and very nice elaboration, madam. Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Danish, for participating and also for a good discussion. We really enjoyed it. So once again, I thank all the attendees, the expert for today's session, Dr. Deepti Pujari ma'am, Dr. Radhika Kedia, for this session. And I think we can close this meeting and a very nice day to all of you once again, and urging everyone to register for this 13th National Annual Conference of the IAP Allergy and Applied Immuno Chapter. Once again, it's going to be an international conference with a lot of academics, good academics, happening at our capital, New Delhi, very easily accessible, and also it will be a great academic feast, as Madam told. Thank you once again, everyone. Good
A
night.
quick word from Dr. Neeraj Gupta, sir. Is Dr. Neeraj Gupta there?
I think excellent session, and I must say that I
Yeah.
have never heard this type of discussion on atopic dermatitis, both by the presenter and by you. So I think this is a very
I
useful
think
exercise. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good night.
Learnet is really glad to have all these brilliant people together in this session. So with everybody's permission, I'm closing the session today and
Thank
looking forward to hosting you again.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Radhika.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Good night.
ma'am.
Good night.